Hey everybody, welcome back to the podcast. My guest today is Patrique from Drones for Good. We've seen the evolution of drones over the past decade or so, and now they have got so many functions, ranging from the monitoring climate change, carrying out search operations after natural disasters, photography, filming, delivering goods, and of course the recreational side of the market is absolutely exploding. Today, our frontline lifesavers operate in every single terrain and every single landscape, at day and night, all times of the year. Drones for Good work to provide fully electric aerial drones as an affordable, reliable and integrated solution for our incidents, missions, minus the emissions and risks to human life. Drones are a massive step forward, and in terms of the emergency services, they provide situational awareness that helps fire brigades and other emergency services frontline workers in their effective response to incidents. The best way for you to support the podcast is to go on over and take a look at our partners. We don't pick them arbitrarily. They are there because we believe they can add value to your life. First up is, of course, the wonderful William Wood Watches. Founded in 2016, William Wood Watches is an award-winning luxury watch company that upcycles rescue service materials in all of their pieces, embedding every watch with a piece of British firefighting history. The iconic logo on every single watch represents the side profile of the 1920s British firefighter's helmet. It signifies heroism and bravery. It's an incredible pleasure to have Johnny, the CEO, and the whole team on board with the podcast. I've had my Valiant Red watch for probably the best part of 4 years now. I absolutely love it. So go on over to William Wood Watches and check them out, whether it's the Triumph, the Valiant, the Bronze, or the Chivalrous collection. There is something for everybody at every single price point. Our final partner of the podcast today is Hikes. Now, the Hikes group actually started in 1948. They did, in fact, start out in the firefighting boots market, but Hikes now supplies armies, fire and rescue, medical, workwear, police, military, hunting, forestry, outdoors. I wear Hikes and I'm doing absolutely everything. If it's training from our operational duties, I'm rocking the Fire Eagles. These are boots that you will see by pretty much every member of the British Firefighter Challenge team. And whether I'm out with the dogs or I'm out with the horses, I'm rocking the Black Eagle Athletic 2.0. If you go over and check these out, these are my absolute favorite boots. And for you, dear listener, Hikes do a giveaway with the podcast every single month. So if you head on over to one of the social channels, whether it's YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, you can win yourself a free pair of Black Eagle Adventure 2.2 GTX. And when I say free, I mean absolutely free. There are no funny games. There is no postage to pay. There's no small print or any silly business. So if you really want to support the podcast, go on over and check out one of our partners. There is something there for everybody. So there you have it, folks. That is the names in the frames for today's episode. That is the wider podcast family of partners. So if you are sitting comfortably, let's buckle up for safety, and I will see you crazy cats on the other side.
Hey there, how are you doing?
Hey, Patrique, I'm good, my man. How are you?
Yeah, doing very well.
Fantastic. What would this need to be for it to be a home run, for it to be like, damn, I love that, and we're proud to share it?
It's a beautiful question. I think that personally, I would be the most happy if listeners at the end of the show really get a good sense of understanding on how the future is already happening, you know, and how this is going to actually change the whole environment for emergency services, for the first responders in the field, and that they understand how complex, but also how beautiful the trying to make a positive impact part is.
Patrique, welcome to the Firefighters Podcast. How you doing, brother?
Doing great. Yeah, very nice to be here on the show.
Now, during the intro, we spoke a little bit about what we're going to be talking about today, but you joined us from the beautiful world of Amsterdam, from Drones for Good. How's the world ticking over there? How are you? How's the team? How's the family?
Doing very well. Yeah, things are slowly opening up again here in the Netherlands, which is great. And you also see that business-wise, so a lot of momentum is now happening to it'll get started again, which is very exciting.
I think a unique thing about what we're discussing today is the fact that you are now looking to implement a lot of your resources, a lot of your innovations, a lot of your creativity and your technology to a field and a sector such as the emergency services. So even through this entire crazy last 2 years, the emergency services has kept going anyway. So what we're here talking about today is the great company Drones for Good that you're involved with. We met earlier in the year at the emergency services show in the UK. A little bit of an intro into what you guys do. I mean, there's so many functions now that drones are used for, ranging from monitoring climate change, search and rescue operations, photography, filming, even delivering products. You know, we see companies like Amazon. When did Drones for Good first get started, and how did you first get involved in this sort of technology?
Yeah, great question. It's a bit of a combination that as a kid, I've always been very fascinated about, anything that flies, actually.
Okay.
still can be if I'm in an airplane. I'm quite excited. So I've always been thinking about the sky and aviation in a broader sense. But then a couple of years ago, I had a great party here in Amsterdam. The sun started to come up already, so it was a very good party. And then I met a guy on the streets actually, and he came to me. He was just walking towards music, and we started to have a little chat. And I found out the guy was actually a refugee from Syria. His name was Ali, and he had been in I don't know how many tent shelter in the Netherlands. And at some point, he was just so done with the situation. He thought, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to just act like I'm a backpacker. I'm going to go to Amsterdam. And when he heard the music there, he just thought, well, maybe a nice party's happening there.
Nice.
We got in touch, and well, obviously he didn't really have a place to stay at that time. I had a room in my house, so I offered him the place, and in the end, he stayed there for I think 1.5 years. We became really good friends.
Wow,
and we still are.
Just
and
double click on that. That's an incredibly philanthropic effort to make. What connection did you make with this person? Because I feel like in Amsterdam the society is much more welcoming. I don't want to say laid back, but it does feel a bit more like you're more forgiving and more understanding of each other. I feel like in the West we're a little bit too quick to judge each other, but even by those standards, that's a really charitable thing to do. Why did you choose to do that?
Well, I think all over the world you'll find people that try to help, and this is also a bit of the way I'm being raised. My mom literally always said to me, whenever you can help out, you should help out. One time she got extremely angry at me when I came home from school, and I was just telling the story that I saw a little guy on a bicycle. I think I was 8 or 9 years old at the time. And he was just walking with the bicycle. My mom said, well, did you stop and see how you could help? And I said, well, no, I just bicycled past him. And she became so furious at me that she put me in the back of the car, drove back, and she said, well, you have a second chance now, go help. And I was little boy crying, had no idea what to do. Being able to then go to the boy, we found out that his bicycle tire got flat, and my mom offered him a ride to his place. The boy was super happy. Afterwards, my mom said to me, well, so now you saw this, what would you have done differently? And I said, well, Mom, I don't have a car. I was not able to help. And then my mom said, well, the least you could do is ask the kid if he would need help.
Yeah.
And I never forgot that situation.
Creating barriers for yourself and accidentally going, oh, well, what can I do? You know, I think there's so much to be. Have you ever seen the film Pay It Forward?
No.
Oh my God. Make a note somewhere. I'll send it to you afterwards, right? Pay It Forward. And basically the analogy of Pay It Forward is it's done by a kid in a school, and he's given an assignment that he must do a kind task, a kind thing for someone else who can never pay it back. And that's the true definition of a kind act. Is if I did you a favor, I'm going to do Patrique a favor, and people would be like, oh yeah, well that's because he runs a company that's something to do with emergency services. You're obviously just doing that to help yourself or something like that. But doing a favor for somebody just like that, you don't even know the person, you help them out, and then the task is pay it forward. And the concept of the film is a good favor is done to you, and you have to pay it forward to 3 people. 3 people you either don't know or you've meet for the first time. You have to do a favor for them that they can never give back to you. And I love that has just gone so global. And they talk about 7 points of separation, that if 3 people did it to another 3, to another 3, to another 3, it wouldn't take many repetitions until we stretch all across the globe. And I see so much of that. But do you think there's something in society now where we are discouraging people from doing those sorts of kind acts because of fear, because of, I heard this story of someone that stopped to help somebody out and they got stabbed, so therefore no one's stopping and helping anybody out now? Whereas that's such a small minority, and doing great things like that. And like when we come back to what you do, Drones for Good, you could do this and do it for Amazon or do it for somebody else and make loads and loads of money doing that way. You've chosen to do it predominantly, or a big part of what your company does is the fact you do it for the emergency services. How do we continue to ensure that people are doing these favors when it's such a scary world out there?
Well, I think that as human beings, we have been evolved in a way to work in smaller communities. So we're, let's say, up to 40, 50, maybe 100 people. And in this more tribal setting, the way forward is being there for each other and helping out. The only way we can do that, though, is if we feel safety around us to do so. Otherwise, we might indeed feel that it might be harmful if we reach out, do something out of our comfort zone. So the way out, I think, is that we somehow inspire each other to be able to do that. And that can be done through the hard lessons like my mom taught me at the time, but it can also be by just seeing others in the field trying to help out. And I think that inspires a lot of people. And I see that happening now in my group of friends as well, because a lot of us are working on trying to make a positive impact in the world, and it will make the perspective of the others broader as well, thinking, hey, okay, but what can I do? And I think then that will become a very positive movement, the circle going upwards.
I think a lot of that has to operate on faith as well, because the return is not immediate. For example, you do something great, so many people will observe that, like some of the work that you're doing now, and they'll go, oh, wow, Jesus, what Patrique's doing and what they're doing over there, that's really cool. But they might not reach straight out and go, hey, dude, round of applause. I love what you're doing. I think that's fantastic. But subconsciously, they'll take it in, and it may have a delayed return where for 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, 1 year later, they finally get enough inertia and enough evidence to do something good themselves. So it's not immediate, and sometimes you can do something good and then you expect everybody else to do good things to each other, and you see such horrible stuff in the world, and you think, oh, what's the point? Everyone's horrible. But you've got to keep acting on faith and got to keep pushing forward with what you know to be the values that you and the team really aspire to.
You're right. Although the effect when you do something good is twofold. First of all, you do have an immediate effect when trying to make a positive impact, because it gives you a good feeling.
Yes.
So from that perspective, it is quite egocentric as well, because when you help out someone and you see the joy, the smiles on their face, or the way you were able to help out, gives a good thing. And also, and I think that is actually a very pragmatic outcome of what the people in the East would call karma. But yeah, sometimes very delayed. It will come back one way or the other. So many times that I had situations where I helped out someone, and then years and years later, our paths got crossed again, or something else happened, and then it did come back. So it's just a beautiful way of living and operating. But I think that, to come back to the story, how we started the drones.
Sorry.
I always love to go
I go circumnavigate the question, but we get back there. Talk to me, Ali, Syria, in living with you for a year and a bit.
Yeah, so we became good friends, and one day we sat together drinking tea, and then he told me the story how he got to mainland Europe. And when he told me that story, it felt really weird, because I had the idea that I knew this story over and over, because I had seen this in the news so many times, reading it in the newspaper, watching it on the telly. But now someone that I knew very, very well was telling it to me face to face. And he told me the story how with family and friends, they got to Turkey. They've been sold a boat to cross the Mediterranean Sea and get to mainland Europe. It was a very shitty boat, shitty equipment, life vest that in the end turned out to literally soak up the water and become even more heavy for way too much money. They got on the boat, tried to cross the Mediterranean Sea, got into bad weather, and they sank. And Ali was one of the only survivors of a boat of, I think, 40 plus people.
So he lost members of his family in the crossing as well?
Yeah, he did. Even after the whole situation he already went through during the war in Syria. So
that must have been so surreal. That must have been so surreal. I know you've already said it, to hear that story, and it gives you such great perspective on your own problems, doesn't it? And you're like, oh Jesus, I don't feel like I can even tell you about my luxurious, high-end elitist problems now, because when you hear what people do like that just for a better life, and there's so many examples of that, but we need to give attention to that, because we can become so self-involved, can't we?
You're right, and here in the Netherlands, sometimes you hear people talking about the refugees, like, they're like luck seekers trying to find happiness. Yeah, it isn't anyone. And we all, indeed. And when you actually hear the situations that these people have been through, then you do indeed feel very humble in a way that we tend to complain about so many little things in life, whereas we shouldn't. The thing was, what I found there, the whole story touched me a lot, but what made me actually really angry was a part in me that I felt kind of discovered how I became so immune for that type of news. Okay. Because over and over you're being confronted with situations all over the world, but also I didn't let it in anymore, the feelings that come with it. And now I heard it from Ali live. The next day I just could not let this happen anymore in a way. And I knew, well, at the time I thought, okay, we have to do something about it. And when I was already working with innovative concepts, I got in touch with some of the rescue agencies around the Mediterranean Sea working there, and just called them up and asked them, okay, how can it be that now for months and months in a row, we see the same images, videos about situations there? How come somehow this cannot be stopped? And they explained to me, they said, well, first of all, it's a really complex political situation. We don't know where the boats are. We don't have the equipment to help out. We don't have the right helicopters on the right places. We don't have enough people there. So whenever these boats get into trouble, we are either too late or we cannot even do a thing.
Because the cost of launching a helicopter out to sea is thousands, and as well as the fact that the environmental impact, that you've got to put people at risk. You don't really know what you're going to. You can't afford to just redeploy it.
No. You're right. You're exactly right. It does. I think search and rescue helicopters start on €8,500 an hour. I think, which is insane price.
Yeah.
And then the whole investment comes with it. So one of my naive things at that time when I was talking with these rescue organizations was saying, well, why do you not use drones? You see them flying everywhere now. Wouldn't that be an idea? And they said, well, we did some tests with them, but drones, either they are military drones and we cannot use them, also very, very expensive, or we just have, well, let's say the consumer grade drones, but they are able to fly 20 minutes and maybe a mile in range, and that's about it. So that's not going to help. And so I asked them, so you're unable to know where the people are, and when you do know where they are, you're unable to reach them in time. And they said, yeah, that's exactly the case. And I said, well, let's see what we can do. And that's where the story started. Pete. Yeah.
So you'd always been fascinated with flying. You say about your fascination with the sky and with aviation, stuff like that, and you've given some great examples there of where you could see aspects of this technology being implemented. When was the first time you got a drone? Had you had an experience with them prior to the story you've just given, or was that sort of the lighting the fuse that then led to this? How did the idea evolve into the company now that reaches and helps so many people?
Yeah, no, I've been playing around with little toy drones a lot, trying to build them myself and making them. So I knew the concept. So I live near Amsterdam Airport, and whenever I'm here, then I'm still amazed by the fact that we as human beings are able to fly. But I also saw how the whole ecosystem of aviation is becoming very traditional, conservative, and very polluting. And I love to sit with some of my friends, and then the inner nerd in me loves to brainstorm about future technology. So one of the ideas that we once came up with is like, why wouldn't you combine drones with airplanes and make sure that they can take off vertically? So if you have airplanes that will be able to take off vertically, maybe like the old military ones from the 60s and 70s, then you wouldn't need the runways on airports anymore.
Yeah.
And you
we have that technology.
Out of that.
Like you say, from the 60s, 70s, and 80s, even from a UK perspective, some of the jump jets and the Harriers and stuff like that were able to take off vertically. And they didn't even use propeller-style systems that you explained there. But I see where this technology is already out there. It's just whether or not it can become commercially viable. It's when the idea gets wide enough that the cost is able to come down. Like you say, it's bridging the gap between that really expensive military-style drone that can do for God knows how many hours, and obviously we're going to get into the detail of that, bridging the gap between that and the theoretical low-level commercial hobbyist with just a 20-minute capacity on it.
Exactly, and I think that when you just asked me the question, when did this all start? You can even go back to a moment when, in my childhood, I loved to watch the television show, the Thunderbirds, where I don't know if you're familiar with it.
Yeah, my dad made me Tracy Island. He made me one out of paper mache.
No way.
Yeah. I had it in our loft, and I'd have the swimming pool would come back, and Thunderbird 1 would take off.
All the trees.
Yeah. Loved
I
it.
love it. Well, I mean, in the end, that's a bit what we are doing right now. You know, we have been building these crazy new type of aircraft that are there to fly out and help, and the concept has been there for a while. But then, indeed, when I just discovered a couple of years ago that there's such a big gap in between the large aviation and well, the consumer grade drones. But there's a huge potential in the middle there, where you can actually, well, you know, fly out with new aerospace technology to help out people. I thought, okay, this is great. So when I continued that quest for first really dedicated to the search and rescue type of operations, and in a later stage also for a broader first responder application, we started building these things ourselves. So we just equipped a regular drone with 4 propellers with wings, and tried to see, okay, can we make that fly? And or the other way around, a little model airplane with 4 propellers.
How did that trial and error process work? I recently finished a book.
A lot of errors.
Yeah. Have you ever? It's only came out a little while ago. James Dyson has released a book called Invention. Fascinating read. James Dyson and how the Dyson industry works, not just the cyclone technology, but everything else. That iteration, I think he did 5,000 iterations of the vacuum before he came up with the cyclone. Sorry. And people forget, and I love your mindset, but you have to be the constant tinkerer and the constant eternal student that welcomes failure. You know, I find a lot of engineers and scientists are a lot more familiar with and accepting of quote unquote failure because they see it as part of the iterative process. You know, you're also an entrepreneur as well, but actually I would argue most entrepreneurs are quite averse to failure, having spent a time with quite a number of them. But if they come from more of an engineering background or a technology background or a scientific background, such as yourself, they're happier to do several iterations. They don't take the hits as bad. You know, they see it as part of the process. So was there any stories where something dropped into the ocean, dropped into the swimming pool, you just lost it over the housing estate somewhere?
Oh, mate, Pete, I have so many of these questions. I mean, we literally had thousands of iterations, and every time something new filled again and filled over. So you are right. You know, it is about failing all over, all the time, but at the same time, really trying to keep your mission leading the way. Yeah. And then it's okay to fail. It's actually a good thing because, you learn most from your failures. One of the things that I always think is quite a fascinating anecdote is that a couple of years ago, I think we built our second or third prototype in a really short amount of time. And then we were invited for a very big aerospace show in the Emirates, in Dubai.
Wow.
To show what we could do. We went there as a Drone for Good company. And so we built this platform, but because we had very limited resources, very limited time, we just built one prototype with one flight controller with all the software on it, and it had to work. We had to ship it that Sunday to Dubai for that flight, but we wanted to do some last test flights on Saturday. Now, during Saturday, somehow we got into the news in the Netherlands, and the national news came to me and wanted to film me, do an interview, and so on. So they did, and that would be going on air on the 8 p.m. News that night. At that time, we were doing test flights in a field here in just outside of Amsterdam. So we were flying there. It was winter time, January, extremely cold. And while at the same time, I was being on the television trying to show how all the amazing things we were doing and how everything was going all right, I was actually standing in the field watching our only prototype that we had at the time doing some really weird movements in the air, thinking, okay, this is not going well. It was very dark. I was there with we were with a team of 3, and at that moment, the aircraft, well, it just got berserk. It went crazy, started flying all over, and then at some point, I just saw it nose diving down, going into a little lake there, I just. No way, we have to ship this tomorrow. The whole thing is going to start this week. What the hell am I going to do? At that time, there was a little layer of ice on the lake. So I saw the thing coming down and going in halfway through the ice. The batteries that are very prone to explosions if they get wet sticking above the eyes, and the flight controller, which was the most important part of the aircraft, just above that. And I saw this happening. The lights stopped blinking, and then I saw the whole craft going deeper and deeper through the ice. So I just undressed there while running there, just jumped in, tried to break the ice away, and could just in time save the aircraft from the batteries reaching the water. I was there in the water holding the thing, waiting until my colleagues came and helped me out there. We could rescue the flight controller and the batteries, which were the most important part there. With a bit of hypothermia, I went back into the car, warming up in aluminium foil. And at that moment, we had only, say, 12 hours to repair parts of the aircraft. Wow. But at least we had the most vital parts, and it worked out. We had it. So in the end, we were able to ship everything, fly there, and had a good flight in Dubai. But there was quite an intense moment.
How did you get invited to Dubai to an aerospace exhibition? That's quite a prestigious thing to be invited to. How long had you been in the industry? Were you already working with some people or some services, or how did that happen?
Yeah, no, not at all. We actually just started at that time, so that's why we just were in the prototyping phase. But I think we just mere luck, and somehow we got picked up. I think it's quite interesting that if you do focus on making a positive impact, trying to do good, then the news reaches out fast. And I think, in Dubai and the Emirates, they love innovations and try to lure everyone to their place, which is good. So that's how we ended up there. Yeah,
that's incredible. Now, you said something really interesting earlier, because obviously you first said about the ideas of going out across the water to support rescue efforts for coast guards and people operating at sea and stuff like that. But I love what you said about being clear what you're trying to do. So if your mission was, we need to design something that's going to be able to go out across the ocean and rescue people, and you had so many barriers with battery life and flight capacity and the size and the environment and weather and stuff out there. But like you say, when I hear Drones for Good, and when I've looked at your website and when I've read some more information about the company, your purpose is to be able to add value in so many different aspects. And if that becomes your sole purpose, you can already take the technology that was effectively already existing and use it in a slightly smaller scale. So when you talk about search and rescue, and we talk about, even from our point, so from the fire service and stuff like that, a lot of the drones that are out there even back then, and certainly the models that you have now, could very quickly be deployed to support the emergency services on a local scale. Like you say, going up and flying around an incident for 20, 30 minutes, capturing all those images and giving you that aerial view of a structure or a landscape, or using your thermal imaging capacities to search for people. If you had only made your one purpose that we need to create a craft that can fly out into the sea and find people that are lost at sea, it could have been a much longer and potentially fatal venture that you didn't get as much reward from. So how soon into the company's sort of experience and sort of the company's journey did you start looking to support other emergency services with search and rescue, with incidents?
Well, I think that in the end, this all comes back on our mission again. I just wanted to use the technology to do good, and the type of technology that we were making and that we are still making can be used in so many different applications. And yeah, in the end, I always say it in a way, we just want to be a little bit of the superhero in the skies, and by that being there as a support for the first responders and the people in the field. And you can do that in so many different aspects. So at some point when we found that building these search and rescue aircraft was quite challenging, especially because you need them during bad weather circumstances a lot. Regulation in Europe at the time wasn't really helping either. So then we went to Africa, and we started to fly in a couple of various African countries where the regulation was way easier because it was simply just way less populated. And again, there's always things you can do. So there in the national parks, they had the same problem. They wanted to support their wildlife against poachers. They did not have money for airplanes or helicopters, and the drones don't fly far enough. So can we help out? Sure, we can. So then we started working together with them. And then at some point, one of the rangers asked me, would you guys also be able to transport little doses of anti-venom for snake bites?
Yeah.
Because our rangers get bitten quite often by snakes, and whenever that happens, they need to go back to find a hospital within 20 or 30 minutes. And we said, well, we are able to fly out that far. Why not? We'll see. So our engineers started to think if we could create a little fridge inside the aircraft to keep the anti-venom in between certain degrees Celsius of like in temperature range, and we were able to do so. And then suddenly a whole new world popped up from NGOs asking if we would be able to transport medicine to remotely located areas. And then we of course had the whole firefighting team that said, well, when you're able to fly out that far, you might be able to support during wildfire. So there's heaps of applications that can be done with the technology.
So take me back, because that all just sounds absolutely fascinating, and I want to de-chunk that bit by bit. So firstly, getting invited out to Africa is one thing. Deciding to actually go is a whole new thing, so you clearly don't have that fear of just picking up and going. I mean, how long were you out there for? Where specifically? You said you worked on some national parks. Did you yourself, as in did the team pilot some of the drones, and did you manage to see some of the poachers at work, and how, to what capacity were you able to put that into practice?
Yeah. So when we went there, and we worked in various African countries, we did a lot of testing in South Africa, where we started out, and we indeed soon found that the technology is great to get to remote places. With thermal cameras, regular cameras, we were able to find where the wildlife is, and we could also develop on trying to find poachers whenever they would get into the park.
You must have had some amazing footage. I mean, just to create that footage with drones. I mean, if you put half that footage on YouTube, I bet you've just got millions of hits just from tracking wildlife. I mean, that's a business in itself. You must have seen some amazing stuff.
No, you're right. Well, normally you're obviously not allowed to fly with drones there, but we were. So indeed, with this great high definition cameras, we were able to get amazing footage there. Wow. So it's been better than the National Geographic, I say sometimes. But, it's a new business model. Yeah, why not?
It's the sort of stuff that some of the natural, like say Natural Geographic, they'd be jealous of some of that footage, because they spend months and months out there, trying to use their antiquated ways to try and get that footage. And you guys, God, I bet it's beautiful. I'm gonna have to go over. Have you got all of that on a YouTube channel somewhere? Because I'll put it in the notes. And if you haven't, dude, you need to release it. You haven't even got to glorify it. Just put some bits out there, because your footage must be incredible.
Yeah. I don't think we have a lot on our YouTube channel, but I'll think about it. That's a good one. It will be great.
Just to see the power of what you guys do and the places that you've been, because the work you do is amazing. I just feel like we need to scream about it. But so you were able to develop a small compartment within the drones that could facilitate a small vaccination. How far could the drones fly at that point? What sort of distances were you able to achieve?
I think at that time we had around 50 to 60 kilometers, something like that.
Wow.
Yeah. So there was enough at that time, and obviously we wanted to be able to increase that range, and we did over the years. But it was already quite something. We did face a lot of challenges being able to fly there in Africa, because the African environment it can be very harsh. We're talking about Tilius. One time we built this magnificent new aircraft that we were super proud of for flight in Africa, and tested it thoroughly here. At some point, we went there, started flying, and after a couple of flights, we just left it there. We came back out after a cup of coffee, and then we saw that the aircraft started morphing, literally. So the whole shape started to become different. Wow. A part of the foam became almost like popcorn. We were like, what the hell is happening here? And we found that the internal temperature reached up to, I think, 95 degrees or something.
Whoa.
And then we found that although you can, it's not a problem at all to make parts of your aircraft painted black in the Netherlands. It's not a great idea in the African sun. Yeah, stupid mistake, but that's
did
how
you
you
ever
learn.
encounter any problems? Because so like in the UK, if somebody flies a drone across somebody's private land, they can get shot down. Some people shoot at them to knock them out of the sky just because they don't like them. They feel like somebody's spying on them or whatever. Was that ever a fear, or did you ever experience it? I mean, in any places that you've travelled, or even certainly in the poacher analogy, if a poacher saw a drone and they're familiar with what you're doing, if I was a poacher, I'd be shooting it out of the sky.
Well, first of all, good luck trying to hit it, because when we fly, we can fly up to cruise speeds of more than 100 kilometers an hour. We fly on an altitude around 120 meters, so it would be about, say, 400 feet. So it's not that easy to actually hit the aircraft. But I think more important for us is that we always, before we start a mission somewhere, we try to make sure that we get in touch with the locals there, so they understand, and that we can explain, and that we get a bit of public acceptance, because that is extremely important for the things that we do. I know. So when I told my parents back in the days that I'm going to do something with drones, what is your feeling when I say the word drone? Then I think my mom started talking about the bomber drones of the U.S. Army, and my dad, as his first thoughts were the very annoying, privacy infringing little drones flying on the beach. And I thought, okay, well, that's not great, because we try to use this technology to do something good. So, we started to think a lot about how can we make sure that we can introduce this new technology in a positive way, and it's very important that you do that in a very close collaboration with the people that will see these aircraft flying over. So one of the things, for example, is that we even thought of the maybe for some people minor detail, but very important for us, the looks of our logo, the way we shape the design of the aircraft is all. It's all very round. We wanted everything to look very friendly, instead of being super racy or carbon fiber composite, whatever. So in all the little details, we try to think, what do people think of it here? And I remember one mission we had in Africa. I think there was a time when we had a part of the aircraft literally in the carbon fiber racy look, and the local tribe there literally thought it was some kind of black magic. And they didn't like it at all. Understandable. We came back later with a white aircraft with a red cross on it, and everyone understood, okay, so this is here to help. Yeah. So, it is a super important part of our work.
You make several great points there. I just wanted to come back to the height just for a second, because like you said about trying to hit something, 120 meters. So just for people's understanding, that's a 40-story building. That's 40 floors high. That is, you. I mean, you wouldn't know it's there. You'd have no clue. You couldn't even hear it. You would have absolutely no clue. Can it actually capture usable footage from that height?
Yeah, great footage. Yeah. So the cameras that we use there
from 120 meters. Wow.
Easily. Yeah.
Oh my God.
That works great. And the good thing about flying at that altitude is that indeed you are kind of traceless. So people don't hear you fly over, especially when you fly wing-borne. So having a horizontal flight, because the whole aircraft is electric, it doesn't make that much noise. So people on the ground, they wouldn't even notice. But from that altitude, you're far away from tall buildings or other elevated parts of nature. And we just have very high definition cameras on board with great zoom and a lot of stabilizing technology for the footage and the imagery. So you indeed have a very, very high resolution video material.
That's incredible. I mean, as you were talking there, there's so many things that go through my head in terms of so many applications. There's just so many applications. You must just be like a kid in a toy shop when you're looking around at all of the problems people are facing. I mean, I even think of like just general agriculture. The amount of time people spend driving around their land in their vehicles, trying to check fences, trying to check livestock, trying to check all this sort of stuff. And I know there's companies across the world, and certainly I can think of a few in the UK, who are now using drones to simply they hire a pilot and buy a drone, and that person will fly across the land 2 or 3 times a week and check everything, and they can do it from the comfort of the head office. Do you know what I mean? They haven't got to have that huge environmental impact and everything like that. So back to the emergency. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, well, the interesting thing there is, because you're right, that there are so many potential applications, and like literally every week we get requests from people all over the world coming up with new applications that I haven't heard before. It's immense, but that's also challenging because it requires us to really calculate through what is so where are we going to focus and what do we have for now. Because you can do anything, but you cannot do everything.
No, you can do everything badly, or you can do 1 or 2 things very well.
Exactly. Yeah, you're right. So what we try to do is per application, literally index and calculate what is the impact that we can make, and that's how we focus. So we try to find out, okay, geographically or per use case or application, where can we make the most positive impact in the soonest period of time from now, and that's how we choose. And I think that in a couple of years we will see this technology being used for way more potential applications in everyday life, used way more. But yeah, first things first.
So what are the key sort of projects or strategies that the company is working on currently? Where are you seeing the greatest return on investment of your time, your resources? And like you say, I mean, it's called Drones for Good. Where are you feeling like you're making the biggest impact?
So I think currently, and that also has to do with the current set of regulation, which is unfortunately here and there still a bit on the conservative side, making it very complex to fly over densely populated areas, urban environments, and so on.
Just expand on that, sorry, before you carry on, because you've said regulation a few times. I'm not familiar with the regulations. As in, I don't own a drone.
Keep it that way. It's very boring work, mate.
Just give me the highlights of how much they are. I say they, governments, aviation societies, organisations. How much are they putting up barriers, and how much logic do you actually see in some of these barriers? What are you and are you not allowed to do as a commercial company providing drones for use?
Let's say now it has improved a lot, although still sometimes it feels very unlogical. In the beginning, when we had to file for permission to fly, we had to work according to a standard framework of regulations, including how we were talking about our kerosene, about our pilots on board, and so on. And we were flying electric. We don't have pilots on board.
So they're just taking, they're taking the current thing of an aviation thing with a pilot and passengers, large fuel deposits on board. They're just trying to copy and paste that to this new technology, which is similar but in a completely different thing, really.
Exactly. And then when we after a lot of time spending doing these applications, we got a call by the ministry asking us, so are you in a helicopter or are you a fixed wing airplane? And I said, well, yeah, we're both. And they said, well, we don't have a box that we can tick for that, so you have to choose. I said, well, can you not make a new box then? And they said, nah, that will take a couple of years.
Yeah.
All right, well, you pick one then.
Okay.
So that took a while, and I think I understand obviously that when you innovate and when you develop new technology, especially when we talk about the aviation environment, that it should be super safe, super reliable, and that you want to know exactly what we work with. But the thing is that there's just many unknowns here that are sometimes very hard for regulators, because we have the current airspace being used also a lot by sport airplanes, hot air balloons, and so on. Yeah. So how are you going to work with new technology and these other air users at the same time? How are you going to calculate the potential risk and what is okay there? Here in the Western world, we find it okay that we have literally hundreds of lethal accidents in traffic. every year here in the Netherlands on bicycles, car accidents, and so on. So apparently that's okay. But if you want to introduce new technology, then they want zero accidents to happen.
Yeah.
Obviously. So how are you gonna move toward it? So that is and was quite complex, because we can do a risk assessment, but it would be childish to say that there is a zero chance of something happening, because
I think one of the big concerns as well is, you say about car accidents, with bikes, vehicles, lorries, whatever. We have an infrastructure that we are both familiar with, and that also when it goes wrong, we feel like we can have an effective combat to it. We have an effective return and resources that will support that emergency incident when it occurs. When you then take that stuff into the air, we just don't have the ability at the moment to effectively police it. That is something that I think really scares people, because also with any great innovation, with any great technology, there also comes the people that will take that technology for dangerous and scary means. Strapping an improvised explosive device to a drone, and then you can go anywhere, and you can launch it from anywhere. Historically, aircraft would go to an airport to take off. Anything that's in the air, they've come from a registered site, or if they haven't, it's usually something so irrelevant. I'm saying this from a completely uneducated perspective, but like a balloon, you could put up a hot air balloon. It's not going to move very quickly. If it is a threat, it's not going to get away from anything very fast. You can intercept it and mitigate that risk quite quickly. But a drone is so agile. The technology is so accessible. So I'm not justifying their thoughts and beliefs, but I can appreciate why they are so scared of, because I think it is fear, and I don't know if you feel the same. It's a fear of, oh God, if we let this out the box, we can't put it back in the box. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, you're right. I mean, you can use technology in both ways, and I think it's also our obligation, also for me personally, to really think through what is the actual impact, also the negative impact that we make with this technology, and how do we protect it from being used in a bad way. At the same time, what you see quite often is that political systems, they try to use regulation to make sure that the bad people don't do the bad things. Yeah. The thing is that these people will not even think about regulation, because they're going to do it anyway.
They don't care. Yeah, so, they're not going to go on to Gov UK and go, before we just launch our terrorist attack, let's just make sure we're following the rules. Okay, that's not part of their strategic meeting. They really don't care. They're going to do it anyway. That's the very nature of them. So all you're actually doing most of the time is creating barriers for companies that are trying to make a positive difference in the world.
You're right, and that's the thing, that you're like, in these type of situations, policies to prevent bad things from happening are actually preventing 99.9% of people and companies that try to do good things from getting closer to their goal. And I think that's something that we should solve if we want to be able to help out these impactful applications. Yeah,
absolutely. So take me back. Sorry, I interrupted you several times. It's a terrible. I just get so excited, and I forget things so fast, so I just spit them out. It's a terrible habit of mine. Applications.
You record everything then.
I know. Yeah, crikey. So we've spoken about working with nature reserves. We spoke about some of the applications overseas. Expand for me on the other aspects that you're currently applying this technology to from that emergency services perspective. Who are you working with? Where have you put in place contracts, or where have organizations or services made purchases, and where is it currently being used?
Yeah, so it is at the moment quite hard to fly over urban areas. There lies a lot of potential in flying over nature areas, or simply less densely populated regions. So that means that two very interesting applications open up, where one is wildfire fighting. Obviously, the world faces a lot of challenges there, simply due to climate warming, and the fact that in many areas, well, we've seen it last year. In the southern part of Europe, even huge areas of land got destroyed. In these type of areas that are usually so big, so it's very hard to keep everything inside or keep track of everything happening here and there. Then it's a great way to use that technology to support firefighters, and that can be done in a preventive way. So during warm or hot days in the drier season, using these aircraft to patrol, using heat cameras, thermal cameras, or regular cameras with AI, being able to detect smoke in a very early phase of a fire can help a lot.
How does it detect smoke? Sorry, how does it? Obviously, heat rises, and there'll be a thermal rising layer that they can pick up. But what other technology is? Is it just the thermal imaging cameras, or how does it pick up smoke specifically? Sorry.
Yeah, so we use a camera system that has a thermal sensor as well as regular RGB video sensor, and we can fuse these images. Then we have algorithms that we can train to detect fire in a very early stage. And sometimes we can indeed use trying to find out heat sources there, but in many, we just simply found that when we fly with the aircraft and we have the camera on an angle, so we don't look at it, the situation top down, but more like a bird view looking forward, we have a way broader perspective, so we can simply see more. Yeah. And we found that the algorithms are able to detect even very, very tiny smoke columns or pillars way quicker than any infrared or thermal sensory information. So, we train the algorithms to become better at it. That requires some manual work in the beginning, but after a while the algorithm is trained well enough and it can do that automatically during flight. And whenever it sees or it detects something that's usually smoke, then a trained flight operator or a first responder can have a look at it, double check, and it automatically then calculates the location, GPS coordinates, and will broadcast it to any first responding organization in the field.
That's great. So, I mean, we've given examples there, wildfires and things in low densely populated environments. Surely, is there not a loophole in the regulation in terms of heavily populated or densely populated areas, that the fact that it's the emergency services, i.e. it's the police looking for somebody that's lost, or it's the police looking for somebody who's committed a crime, or it's the fire service responding to a factory in the middle of a heavily populated area, are they not allowed to use them there then? Are the regulations that restrictive that we can't fly over public housing, or surely the emergency services get an exception there?
Yeah, you would say, and we might go there. The airspace has always been extremely heavily regulated, and in that sense, there were some exceptions being made for military users. So the defense part of the government, they can take over airspace. Emergency services, not necessarily. Now, though, there is a new European regulation, and with that new European regulation, UK, Switzerland are joining as well. There is an exemption for state aircraft, meaning that indeed, if the aircraft has been used by the state for emergency services, in maybe an application where there's a lot of opportunity or there's crisis, the use is being very urgent and critical, then exemptions can be made as well. The thing is that you have to know exactly what the risk of the mission is to set it up against the opportunity that you have. Yeah. And to give a great example here is if if humans get a heart attack, then we know that if we use CPD or like if we would just try to save these people, a bystander trying to help out without technology, the chances of surviving are quite slim. Yeah. If we have an electronic device, AED, defibrillator, whatever, then the chances of surviving increase until 90%.
Significantly.
It is significantly. If applied within 6 minutes. So if we would have the ability to fly to people in need with that technology, we can simply calculate how many lives we can save. Yeah. We also know what the risk is that the aircraft comes down. So this is actually one of the things that we're currently trying to find out. Do we as a company not have the obligation to break the law by knowing that we can save people and doing less people harm?
Yeah, because like you said, every single successful flight you undertake adds more data to the fact that the likelihood of you losing a drone or a drone coming down and colliding and injure somebody, it's got to be minute. I mean, do you have a percentage of flights that are that you fail at? It must be very low. Do you know that number?
Well, it's extremely small. We do have these numbers, but they differ per application. I mean, the whole aircraft has been built up in a way with so many redundant parts of technology. So if this component fails, we have many other components that will automatically be used as a backup system. So,
and equally, if it does fail to a certain extent, I imagine it will just safely take itself to the ground. It will get to a point where it won't try to continue going at the risk of colliding. It will say, look, we can't continue to make safe progress, so we're just going to ground right here, using its camera to ensure there's nothing below it and safely make a landing. It's not going to keep trying to go forward and risk colliding with something.
You're right. You're very right. It's even that way that our mission planning is able, whenever we set out a route, to allocate certain rally points during the whole flight trajectory. So whenever something happens and we lose all connections, we use propulsion power or whatever problems we have, the aircraft will simply maneuver to the nearest pre-defined safe rally point where we know that people cannot get too easily.
Also makes it easier for you to find it as well.
Yeah. Well, we always have a tracer on board, so that is a standalone tracer. We know where it is. But yeah, that's how it works. So in that sense, we can fly in an extremely safe way.
Yeah. So can they fly in the rain? Is a question I was always thinking. Yeah. I didn't know whether what extreme can it fly in the rain? To what extent can it fly in the wind? Is there a certain knots or speed of wind direction that it can't continue to fly in?
Yeah, so we I think that's where a lot of effort went into the last 2 to 3 years from our side. So we saw that by we talked about various new use cases that we could try to chip into, but we said what we would love to do, and we think is way more important, is now to innovate this technology to be able to fly with in a way larger window, meaning that we want to be able to fly at nighttime in heavy wind conditions, heavy rain conditions, more type of circumstances, freezing conditions, and so on. So that's what we did, and we've been doing a lot of tests and redesigns of our aircraft to be able to do that. And we wanted, and we designed everything to be able to fly in 92 to 95% of all weather conditions, and that's what we do. So there's still, sometimes there are when you have an extreme storm, we are unable to fly there currently. But due to a lot of smart aerodynamical design changes and a lot of software updates, we were able to withstand way higher winds, which is great, because what you see in the emergency services is that in many applications, especially when you talk about offshore use of the aircraft, we're talking about bad weather conditions.
Yeah, and even when you say, when you say these have limitations, these are limitations that would actually apply to most standard operations anyway. These aren't like, oh, it's a little bit windy outside and they won't be able to fly in this sort of weather. We're talking really exceptional weather conditions that actually we probably wouldn't be carrying out a rescue anyway. And I imagine it probably falls in alignment with a lot of other aircraft can't fly in the same situation. So it's not like the technology is a lesser standard than everything else that's in the air. If it can't fly, it's because it's very severe weather and storms that you're experiencing.
You're right. And actually, because we use aircraft that are unmanned, we're able to fly in even higher more extreme conditions than helicopters or airplanes, for example, because then you have pilots on board.
The risk is lower. How long do they last now? Because you spoke right at the beginning about 20-minute life capabilities of these original drones. The fact that you can fly 60 kilometers would suggest they're gonna. How long do they last now?
Yeah, I think so. So now the range is over 100 kilometers that we can fly. Our new aircraft has a range, depending a bit on the payload that we take, but in between 1 and 1.5 hour flights. that we do, which is great and usually way enough for most of the applications. So what we do is we take off and we do that vertically. That costs a bit of energy, but as soon as we transition into a forward wing-borne flight, you become super efficient. And whenever we are at an incident or location where we want to be, we go into a loiter and try to go around saving as much energy as we can. When you really have to hang still in the air, you can go back to hover mode again. But again, that will cost a bit more energy. And that way we'll stay at the situation as long as we can. And when we send, or when the aircraft senses that the batteries run out, it can fly backwards. And when required, there can be a second aircraft already at the situation to take over.
Probably a very simplistic question, but I'm just having my head in the minds of people that will be listening and are considering getting something like this for their service. I'm imagining the batteries are just plug in, plug out. You can just stick another one in straight away and you can have a bank of them. Would I be right in saying that? Or do you have to recharge the entire craft, or can you just switch them out?
Yeah, no, you just switch them out. It takes you a couple of seconds. You can also charge the whole aircraft if you want, and that's especially what we found is that the most impact you can make in a situation is if you're able to fly out before the first responders are even at the scene. So to be able to do that, we wanted the aircraft to be at standby during the whole time. So we developed a docking station, like a launch station where the aircraft is in, where it is charged. And at the moment, we know the location of an incident. The docking station opens up, then this becomes literally the Thunderbird. I still want to build a little swimming pool and palm trees on it to make it look cool.
Man, you'll do it. I know you will. As soon as you're allowed to have one manned, I bet you've got one that you can sit on already. You just haven't told anybody. You can just take it straight out your backyard and you'll be popping anywhere you like.
Exactly. Well, yeah, you get everywhere quick. Next time you're here, then we'll show you.
We're working on something.
Oh yeah. But the cool thing there is that when you're able to deploy that quick, you're at a situation way earlier, and you just can make a better. You have way better situational awareness of a situation, helping all the results become better. And to be able to do that, we wanted the aircraft to be able to charge after flight again in the docking station. So that's something that we've been working on. And because of that, you don't need people to go out, put the aircraft out, change batteries, and so on. That all happens automatically done.
Yeah, and that echoes back to the examples of delivering vaccines. And also, I was thinking when you were talking about defibrillators and stuff like that. So two questions. You said about payload. What is the current payload? Because before our conversation, we spoke briefly about the future of the emergency services and how I recently had a guest on who spoke about delivering equipment to site and how they feel that drones will have the capacity to deliver pieces of equipment. But then my mind also goes to, like, I'm up in the Lake District next week, just this is a mountain range in the UK, and climbers, that get into trouble. And like you said about somebody that experiences a heart attack or something like that, the ability to have something sat in a charging port could immediately take off with a defibrillator and be at that individual in a couple of minutes. What is the payload they can currently carry, and I'm imagining those are sort of applications we're looking at?
Yeah, so current payload of the new aircraft lies in between 3 and 5 kilograms, so it will be 6 to 10 pounds with quite a lot of volume. So that would be well sufficient for carrying defibrillators, any urgently required medical goods like sometimes when you need blood or emergency kits, there will be well sufficient there. I think that we'll see the next couple of years these aircraft scale to carry larger payloads, both weight-wise and volume-wise, to be able to support first responders even more. We see that this way. especially for the multiplication that we fly now, it's well sufficient for 90+% of all flights.
Is that just a case of size of the aircraft in terms of what it's capable of carrying? Because some of your aircrafts, the one that you had at the Emergency Services show, what was that called? Because that was, I mean, you could fit it in the boot of a 4x4 vehicle, but you've got to strike the balance between something that can be taken to incidents or taken to locations and be deployed from there, but also wanting it large enough to be able to facilitate all of the abilities you said there about the height, about the 100 kilometer distances and all that sort of stuff. How big are these drones now?
Yeah. So they're getting bigger. So the wingspan is 2 to 2.5 meters.
Wow.
So that would be 6 feet up. And I think that from a little theory class here in aerodynamical design. The thing is, within nature, the heavier your aircraft is, exponentially more wing surface is required.
Yeah.
So you have to become exponentially larger. That is very inefficient. That's also the reason why, if you look in nature at evolution, you'll see that many flying things have become a lot smaller. All the flying dinosaurs that we saw in Jurassic Park are not around anymore, and that's for a reason. Birds are becoming a lot smaller either, because it is increasingly more efficient to be smaller. Now we are doing almost the opposite, because we want to be able to fly out also with heavy duty material. Meaning that every time we have to come up with technology that is exponentially more efficient, because we cannot increase our wingspan and propellers infinitely, because then we cannot transport the aircraft itself anymore. So we have to try to find the right balance in between these two things. Because of that, we also decided to develop the aircraft in such a way that it's quite modular, so you can simply just click off the wings, click them back on for transportation, and that works. But also, I think that the next couple of years you will see that these aircraft do not to be transported anymore in cars, because they transport themselves. They are just located in these docking stations at centrally located areas where they can fly out to any situation within minutes, just covering a certain range within geographic area where they will deliver help.
Now, just to add sort of weight to the argument of how much these make an environmental impact versus some of the alternatives that we use, and even if we're just traveling by land, the amount of toxic gases we're throwing into. I know this is a very obvious question for you, but I'm kind of put my mind in the head of people that are listening. These are fully electric, drones. So in terms of environmental impact, with the exception of the noise, which again, because they're electric, is very small, am I right in saying there's effectively zero pollution involved in these?
Yeah, you're right. Yeah. 100%. During operations, zero pollution. The energy being used to power the flights and charge the battery is obviously green energy. That's how we work. Part of the production, we try to make that more sustainable as well. So together with our suppliers, we're trying to find the most, let's say, the best way to reduce carbon emissions also. What a lot of people do not know is that both helicopters and airplanes not only produce carbon, but also nitrous oxide. A lot of fine dust particles. And somehow it became a big trend to talk about carbon reduction. But we tend to forget all the other things that are actually way worse. So by being able to look at it from a more holistic perspective in that sense, and trying to have to look at the technology from the moment you start producing something until the end of operations, the whole life cycle, seeing, okay, what is the effect, not just the carbon, but any other things. I think is super important for technology like this. But compared to what we currently use, it's already a massive difference.
Yeah, it really is hard for anybody to stand in opposition of those glaring facts. Because like you say, even in the development of the technology, people just look at the impact of the end product, of which there's actually significant reduction in what you do anyway. But even if you just look in the life cycle of the product in coming to its existence, we create so much toxic environmental impact creating a lot of these other forms of transport, let alone the impact the end product makes on the environment. And yours seems to circumnavigate so many of those. But I imagine it's not a very popular fact when you're working, I say in competition, not really, but it's an alternative. So the idea of it being an alternative suggests that it must be in competition with older aspects of transporting things and getting that information. It must be hard to sing the praises of this. Do you find that people are still nervous about it when you're communicating it? You're doing, the company's called Drones for Good. You guys are doing it for a lot of, with the greatest respect to Amazon, you're not doing it for a massive commercial return. There is obviously the company needs to make money, but are you still seeing a lot of pushback, or is the tide turning to the point that people are becoming more accepting of the technology?
Yeah, I think so. And we do not necessarily see ourselves as the only alternative to what we currently do. You can also work in parallel with current solutions, and you should, because you cannot stop all the operations we currently do that might not be perfect for the environmental climate. So we try to introduce our technology, and with AVY, we try to see, okay, are we able to make a contribution, maybe even in a small part of the working field of our clients, and from there together explore, okay, how can it be used more broadly? And what you definitely see is that there is a whole shift in paradigm happening, where people and organizations do really care about the actual impact, and not just the positive impact, but also try to find out, okay, so a part of or next to the cost price and these type of variables, how is it actually gonna benefit society? Yeah. And what is it gonna cost on the long term? We get questions as well. So what are you going to do with the product after its lifetime? You're going to just throw it away? You're going to recycle it? What are you going to do with that? And I think that's a very good thing, because it challenges us as a company to think broader. And I think we as human beings, but also all the people working in the supply chains, have the obligation to think about these things and question each other. What is the ultimate impact?
I absolutely think you're right. I think it's a fair question. I would ask how many people are asking the same questions of people that produce a lot of the vehicles and things that we see. And I don't think anybody is asking the question, what are you going to do with it when we're finished with it? Because a lot of the chemicals and a lot of the fluids and a lot of the carcinogens that come out of those current forms of technology, a lot of people sense that. So it's a valuable question. And the problem is we already have lots of ways that we sustainably recycle plastic. So the argument is probably fairly redundant, but it's worth asking. And it's great that you guys are putting the thought into that technology. You did make a great reference, and I feel I would be remiss if I didn't ask the question for people that are looking at utilizing this technology more. How much does it cost? If a service or an organization thought, you know what, I've listened to Patrique and I'm just bowled over by how deployable and how usable this technology is. What would an organization be expected to invest if they wanted to utilize this technology?
Yeah. So the technology by itself, the aircraft, maybe even the docking station, depending a bit on the type of camera that you take or medical payload, they are ranging from an average car to a very expensive car. So that's a bit the price range. What we usually do though is work not necessarily in a way where we just sell the aircraft and say good luck with this. But we work in a model where we deliver the technology and also part of the services, especially because it's not that easy to get the regulations to prove in certain regions, and we do have a lot of experience with that. We just say, okay, we deliver the service that you don't have to think about the whole technology, or you'll just get the data that you want, or you get your medical goods being delivered in time, and then you just pay on a monthly base, which can be ranging from, let's say, 1,500 euros to 4,000 or 5,000 euros a month. And then it comes down on how you're going to use the aircraft. So the interesting thing there is that we see some customers, they just want the aircraft there as a kind of insurance in case of a very large incident.
Yep.
So they know that whenever something would happen, they would be there within minutes. But when it becomes really interesting is when first responders start to work together. Yeah. And when for example, you have one organization using the aircraft every morning to do certain checkups. Here in the Netherlands, you probably know we are big in water management. We have to, because everything is quite low under sea level here. So the inspection of all the dikes around the country is extremely important. So if you can use the aircraft to do dike inspection in the morning, then afterwards being used for checking certain nature areas, whenever there's an incident offshore of service being in trouble or missed, then the aircraft gets a prioritization towards one of these use cases, flies out there, and whenever there would be a huge incident at an industrial area, then the aircraft can be used there. So then you minimize the cost of such an investment by being able to use it almost 24/7.
The more you use it, the more the concept pays for itself. And actually, even if you're just so to try and put some figures to that, and I know you already did anyway, if somebody were investing 2,000 euros a month as an ability to go and do those checks, fast response to incidents, getting an understanding for where and how many resources are required. If you tried to transition that into a physical cost, so if you tried to do all of the same things with people, you could, just for a crew of firefighters to travel out to an incident and come back, 4 firefighters on an appliance to be turned out, you'll have covered that cost in one incident.
Definitely.
That is one. It's going to be. It's probably more expensive to send us, aside for the fact that you risk us and we're then a resource that can't be utilised in other aspects as well. Talk to me about the life cycle.
10 minutes of helicopter flying, I think.
Absolutely. How the life cycle of the products? So how long do they last?
Well, depending a bit on certain components, but we use 3 years, so 36 months as a depreciation time for one of the aircraft. Obviously, we do maintenance during that time, and here and there we change certain components that degenerate a bit faster. I would say that the fuselage of the aircraft has a way longer lifetime than just these 3 years. So we're also able to refurbish all the aircraft and reuse them again. But that's also why with many clients we work together more or less in a subscription model. They use monthly payments then, but then we also update them with new technology because innovations are going so extremely fast that every year again the aircraft and the technology becomes so exponentially better that it is obviously a preference to use that. So that's how we did it.
And some people struggle with that because they hear that and they go, "Oh, right, so it's going to have like bugs and stuff." But I think no. You think about your smartphone. Yeah, think about the smartphone you have in your hand, your iPhone or your Samsung or your Huawei or whatever you use. How often does that get updated? You probably don't realize it's actually being updated every single day. It is constantly having bugs taken out of it. Every time it taps into a network, it's having an update on one of its applications or one of its processes. So it's constantly being updated. You're constantly getting a new iteration of the software. So the fact that you guys also provide that should reassure people.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's exactly how it works. And the interesting thing here is that obviously we have to design an aircraft and the hardware that it actually starts. But at some point, it all comes back to software updates. And just as with smartphones, we are able to do software updates over the air, meaning that because we have connection with the aircraft anyways at all times, we can, and it's not just about solving bugs, it's about adding extra features ongoingly. And so making the aircraft better at all times. And one of the interesting thing here is, for example, that such a thing as the wind resistance. When we're able to fly in wind conditions of 25 knots with software updates, just software tweaks, making the flight control improve over time, we are able to withstand around 35 knots of wind speeds. So we don't change any.
Wow.
Yeah. So we don't change anything on the hardware designer or anything mechanically. It's just all software. Yeah. Same with the accuracy of the aircraft. I think there was a great win we had recently where in the beginning we used GPS for the main maneuvering and navigation accuracy. But the thing with GPS is it works fine, but sometimes there's a little bit of a big offset. So the accuracy can be around 1 meter or something. Then we started to integrate not just the American GPS, but also the European Galileo, the Russian GLONASS, the Chinese Beidou, and it became a lot better. And then only a couple of weeks ago, our software team came up with a solution to find any offset from a specific location and use that to improve the signal and the calculations on how we get to that accuracy. And that way, they were able to get accuracy of 14 millimeters, meaning that you can literally see the movement of, it's 1/10 of an inch, I think, no, 1/20 of an inch. So yeah, so it's insanely good. Just software updates.
That is incredible. Before we talk about sort of how people can reach out to the company, I wanted to move into a period where I sort of ask you a few personal questions about yourself, because you're clearly an interesting guy and you've been on some incredible adventures. So I wanted to start by asking you about habits, because we've spoken about the habit of constant innovation, constantly asking yourself for questions. How can we do it better? How can we do it better? That acceptance of failure. But over the past sort of 1 to 3 years, what are some of the habits that you think have served you best?
I think that a very important thing for me is extreme, maybe even radical honesty. I think that's a very important part. And I think that personally, I've seen so many times that when you do that, when you dare to have the courage to be very honest about something and be very open about something, that it might not be easy, but in the end, it will turn out great. Also, as a company with AVY, when we started, we found ourselves in an ecosystem where, especially in all the tech startups and scale-ups, everyone is bragging about how great the technology is, and then ultimately they're over-promising way too much, and then they have to under-deliver, making their customers and clients very unhappy. So it is better than to be very open and honest about expectations, and people and companies will appreciate that.
Yeah. So like under promise and then over deliver, basically. So only promise things you are absolutely implicitly you consider you can do in an excellent fashion, and then everything over and above, like you say about the software innovations, the upgrades to the equipment, that is all the over deliver, always getting more for your money than you thought you were.
Exactly. And also internally. So we've been talking about, making fuck-ups, making mistakes, failures, and so on. And that's okay. That's part of the deal.
Yeah.
Also internally, we have every month, we have a meet-up with the whole team. We call that our Thirsty Thursdays. We have drinks with the whole company, but we also do, we celebrate our fuck-ups because we think it's so important to not be scared about the things that we that went wrong, but to embrace them. Be okay with the fact that things not always go as planned, that we learn from them, and that we create safety for everyone to express and to work in whatever comes up. That are, I think, very important parts of what I've learned the last couple of years.
What I remember, I forget what company it was. They used to set off a cannon and celebrate the huge failures, because they almost treat, even if they'd done an investment of a certain amount, but they'd realized it was the wrong thing to do and they'd lost a little bit of money, they still celebrated the failure because they've basically circumnavigated, or they've avoided the exponential failure, which was if nobody said anything, if nobody acted with brutal honesty, like you say, that we'd have kept wandering down this route, and we'd have got further and further when someone's secretly sitting there going, we're going the wrong way. Oh God, I need to tell somebody we're going the wrong way. We made a mistake 4 turns ago, and nobody stood up and went, Patrique, we're going the wrong way. My mistake, brother. We should have turned left back there. We need to stop. And you're like, great, thank you, because I was going to keep going for 20 miles down this direction.
You're right. And the weird thing is that this happens in so many larger companies or organizations where everyone on the working floor feels like, okay, this is not going well, but no one dares to speak up. Yeah, it's a shame.
It is a shame. On that note, I wanted to ask you, what's a common piece of advice that you think people should ignore? From your experience, things that people think are guaranteed, or the advice you hear or you heard when you first started the company that you think, that's bullshit. People need to ignore that advice.
Maybe it would be wait for the right timing. I think that's the worst advice there is. There is never a right timing. The only thing that you can do is wait and find out that you waited too long. So whenever you want to do something, whenever you want to start a business, or whenever you want to work on one of your dreams, whenever you want to make impact, whatever, the best moment is literally to start now, because every second you work on that topic will teach you something that will be valuable for you. And by just waiting for the right timing, which is something you can only know in hindsight, and then even it doesn't make sense anymore. It's just a sense of bullshit. Don't listen to it.
Absolutely. And I see that with so many things, the right time to have a child, the right time to start a business, there's no right. You're never going to be ready. No. Because no matter when you start, in the first 10 steps, someone's going to turn around and trip you up. They were always going to do that. So whether you started now or 10 months ago, somebody was going to trip. There was going to be a setback anyway. So just crack on with it. Do you know what I mean? You're going to have your setbacks, and you think you've missed one. There's another one around the next corner. You're just going to have to prepare yourself and steel your resolve to keep pushing through.
Exactly. And what you say, you're never going to be ready, is right. In that same time, whenever you do start with something earlier on, it will make you more ready than you previously were, because you simply have more experience with it.
Absolutely.
So,
that's why every time I think about speaking to people on the podcast as well, I think it's almost such an irony in it. When I first started speaking to people in local services around me, and then I had some first big guests and stuff like that, and people such as yourself, I think, I'm going to speak to Patrique about drones. I'm like, I don't know anything about drones. I know a little bit. I know a friend that's got a drone. And then I'm like, my inner voice goes, who the hell are you to talk to him? You're going to ask stupid questions. But then the other side of me goes, well, then who better to speak to? Do you know what I mean? What a privilege to speak to somebody that does this as part of their expertise. The selfish part of all of this for me is the amount of development, personal development I get from this, and the insights that I get from hearing somebody like yourself so passionately articulate something that you have made a large part of your life is such a privilege. But if you were constantly scared of like, oh, what if Patrique turns around and asks me a question? I don't know it. Good. Well, if you just keep telling me stuff I already know and I tell you stuff, nobody learns anything. What's the point? We're not going to learn it. We just keep walking around, patting each other on the back, going, "Oh, you're so intelligent." No, you're so intelligent. I don't know what he's going to say.
Yeah. Well, that's a cool thing, but it does require a courage to be able to step out there. And I think that as human beings, we all have our own fears, and that's okay. But the fact that we are also equipped with a talent called courage there, and that helps us to overcome, not necessarily overcome these fears, but to work with these fears. And I think that's an important thing where we should inspire each other as a community. It is way more interesting to talk with people about stuff you don't know yet, because you'll learn a lot there than talk about all the things you already know. How's that going to help you?
Whenever I go to a meeting or a party or whatever, the first few times I did it, my friends and people that I know would think it's a bit strange because I wouldn't go and sit with them. I always go and sit with people I don't know. Oh, just to be like a table of people, and I just go and sit down with them. And at first they all kind of look at you like, hi. And I'm like, hi. I'm Pete, I've came here from wherever. How are you guys doing? What's your name? What do you do? And if initially people think it's a bit weird, but then you'd be surprised how quickly people just get over themselves. Children are a great example. I forget what book I was reading a while ago where they spoke about a family that traveled around trying to learn different cultures. And they would go there with their children, and the parents would sit down with the elders of wherever, and they'd be talking and trying to find a way to communicate and trying to find shared values. In the meantime, within 15 seconds, their kids are running around with the other kids, talking and learning and picking up new words. And you're like, all it is fear. You're just scared of something. The kids are just going in there, optimistic, trying to have a connection. And they immediately just point at a ball and go, "Hey, ball, you like playing?" Yeah, and off they go. And then they're making friends, and then they're coming back, and they've found a rock, or they've both got the same coloured hair, or they're just sitting there and laughing. And so many of these barriers, so many of these fears, we create them. We create them ourselves. They're not universal. We've created them, and I love it. The more naive I allow myself to be, the more I enjoy life. People hear naive or optimistic, and they think you're foolish. And I'm like, no, I'm not foolish. I weigh up the risks, and I'm not going to throw money at things that are just going to go down the drain or anything like that. But I'm always ready to be the idiot. And that's the whole point of the podcast half the time, is I want to ask the stupid questions, because chances are nobody else knows them either. Half of my list, there'll be some people going, "Oh, Pete, that's obvious. I know everything about drones." Yeah, okay, then this probably isn't the episode for you. But most of us don't know anything about it. And I'm fascinated with the work that Patrique is doing. But like you say, you've got to be willing to step out there and be the one to ask the stupid questions sometimes. And there is no stupid questions, really.
Exactly. And I think that part, literally the fascination, maybe that's the part what kids inspire us with, because they're all extremely fascinated about everything. And that's a great part, because that helps to overcome any fears that we feel. If you're truly fascinated about something, you want to know everything about it, you want to experience it, you want to feel it. And that's an amazing thing, I think, to be able to observe all that new knowledge and whatever. That's great.
I love it, brother. Yeah. You've shared so many fantastic adventures and some of the stuff you've been involved with. I wanted to try and pin you down and look for an example of one of the proudest things that you and the company have been involved in. I mean, there's several from our conversation you could pick from, but what's an example of something that makes you feel really proud about what you do?
It's interesting, because I personally always battle a bit with being really proud about something. I think that's part of me that just always wants to continue and wants to grow and wants to move on. So when you ask that question to me, first thing that I feel is, no, we haven't deserved that yet. We should continue, because there's still so much potential that we want to tap into. And I can fantasize about many moments when we can really be proud about something, where we can really make a massively global impact. But I think that's also maybe just part of me always working towards the future.
Yeah, that's the torture genius. It's the torture genius, and I have it. And I don't call myself a genius, but it's a bit like when you take one step forward, your vision expands. So like you were so dead set on taking that first step forward, but when you make that first step, your vision expands and you go, oh wow, wait until we get over there. That is going to be incredible. And then you get there and you go, oh my God, I've just turned the next corner. And if you've seen what's ahead of us, this is incredible. And it's okay to do that to yourself. It's not okay, but we do it to ourselves all the time, and I do. But you have a team that you work with. So how do you balance not being too proud, ego, whatever, resting on your laurels, but also celebrating the wins? So instead of thinking of it as proud, what wins do you celebrate, I suppose, with the team? What are some of the things? Because if I asked you what are you proud of the team about, I'm sure you would give me a list and we'd spend the next hour talking about all the great things your team has done. But you've always got your mind in the future.
Exactly. And that is challenging sometimes, because I'm thinking about 18 to 36 months in the future at least, and sometimes even more. Whereas most of the team is working on things that they're doing right now in the next couple of weeks. So somehow we have to bridge that. And then it really helps to have great people in our team that are able to also bridge that gap in between that time span. I think that what indeed does make me proud is when I look at the team. So somehow we managed to get a team of great people, great engineers, all together that came here because they believe in our mission. And when they found AVY on their quest and saw that how we really wanted this technology to do something good, they decided to come work for us. And we have people working here that came from the military. And we have people working here from very commercial organizations, earning way more money than they could earn here. But they believe that much in what we do that they are extremely driven in developing technology here, and that makes me super proud. The fact that we do that together, that everyone is so extremely ambitious and driven, not because they will get rich with it, because they believe that's the way they can make impact.
That's true engagement, isn't it? That's true passion. You know, when a competitor or whoever, I don't want to keep referring to Amazon, but large companies of the world go, hey, come and work for us because you could earn twice as much, and they go no, and then you go why, and they go because we're doing something really cool over here, and I really enjoy it, and they're like, shit. we're not doing cool stuff, we're just trying to make money. And they're like, yeah, we get paid as well, but I really enjoy what I do. I see the work that Patrique and the team are doing, and I can see the future. I can tangibly see a connection between what we're doing and the value that is going to deliver to such a wider group of people than just putting more zeros on the end.
That's it. And there's always a part in us, a little part of our ego that wants to earn a lot of money and wants to show off all the cool things. But there will come a point in your life, and hopefully there will come earlier than later. But where you try to check in, okay, but what do I want to do in life, and what is important for me? What impact do I want to make? And I think that vision or personal mission should be leading in your quest. And of course, it's important that the things that you do are fun. Of course, it's important that during that whole quest and setting it out, that should be done in a way where you have fun as well.
Yes.
But I think the mission is leading. So that's a great thing about working here.
I love that, mate, and that's why I felt that when I spoke to you at the emergency services show and I spoke to the team, because it echoes so much of the emergency services. Very few people get into the emergency services because they want to earn a lot of money. If they do, they very quickly realize they're not going to earn a lot of money doing it. But when they look outside at people in different sectors of the world, in different organizations and different companies, and they know themselves, they're like, but we do something that's really cool. Yeah, we get paid to go and climb up buildings. We get paid to, go and do rescues out of rivers. We get paid to not play with fire, but we get paid to do something that's really cool. And I always say the biggest currency that we have in life is the impact that we make on other people. That is going to last far longer than anything you build or you buy or anything like that. The value that you give to somebody else and the impact you make is massive, and that will last for generations. There'll be somebody that has an experience with you, and you make a difference in their life, and they will become that lightning rod of the story. They'll say, yeah, I met this guy Patrique once, and he helped us out with this, or he came up with this innovative product, or they came and helped the team out, and as a result of that, we did X. And you become part of that story. It's incredible.
Yeah, that's what I think as well. So, and that makes my light shine and that of our colleagues as well. And I think of all the first responders and people working in the emergency services. So that again forms a community, which is so important. It can be so inspiring for so many others as well. So yeah, that makes me proud.
Final question, absolute final one, I promise, because I want to be respectful of your time. If you had a gigantic billboard, or you had a message, one message, it could be a quote that you like, it could be a paragraph, it could be something that means something to you, and you had the ability to share that with the world, something that you think people need to hear, what would be that one statement, that one quote that you think people need to hear?
I think that it would be a question similar. Maybe it would be a text questioning people, where can you make the most impact? Because I hear people say that they are doing great for the world because they started eating less meat or taking the bicycle to work. And, that's great. And I'm very happy that you do that. But there's more you can do. And I think as humanity, we are facing some really, really big challenges in these times. And it all comes back to us now. Like, how are we going to solve that? We made a massive mess out of many things. And now we have to somehow find a way to solve these situations. But as mankind, we are extremely smart. We are driven. We have huge potential. We have huge talents. So how are we going to do that? But we need everyone there. So if I could put something on a billboard, that could be an invitation to everyone out there to go back home, look in the mirror, think, okay, what makes you unique in a way where you could make a lot of impact? Go do that now.
Absolutely. I've actually got something written on top of my laptop, and it's the next tattoo that I'm going to get, and it says, less impressed, more involved. Because you can look around at so many things of the world and go, wow, wow, wow. Yeah, okay, now you do your thing. You get involved as well. And that's exactly what I hear when you speak and articulate it in that way. Patrique, thank you so much for taking time out of your day. We have been talking, believe it or not, for about 2 hours, and I can't believe how quickly it goes. But thank you so much for your time. Send my love to the team, send my love to the family. I sincerely look forward to maybe being in person one day and getting to experience the great work that you do.
Thanks a lot, Pete. It was a real pleasure to be here, and thanks for all the great questions. You inspired me again with all the questions, and yeah, you're very welcome here. The door's always open for you. Thanks a lot.
See you, brother.
See you.
Bye-bye.
You too.
Hey everybody, me jumping back in just to say, wow. I mean, what an incredible guy. I mean, and the whole team out there, at Drones for Good. Patrique has really put something so special together. My sincere hope from this is that we have all got a greater insight into how this new technology can be harnessed for the greater good, how it can limit the risk that we place our first responders in, and also how it can allow us to be more efficient and more effective in the way that we deliver care, support, search, rescue, firefighting, law enforcement, medical response to the ever-growing list of challenges that we as frontline operators are facing. So a massive thanks to Patrique. If you want some more information about Drones for Good, look in the notes below. You will see a link to their website. You can contact Patrique and Manon, and one of the members of the team will get back to you if you want to learn a little bit more about this. If you want to look at how you can utilize this technology in your organization or in your company, that is the place to go. Thank you once again for coming back to the Firefighters Podcast. It has been my pleasure to have your ears with us for the past hour or so. Thank you for your time. Please support your emergency services wherever you are in the world. And until next time, stay happy, stay healthy, stay hungry. And I'll see you soon right here on the Firefighters Podcast.